Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com and welcome to Watch and Learn number 8. Today we're going to be talking about watch cases and finishes. I'll get just a little bit into PVD processes. Maybe I'll talk about DLC briefly. But I want to talk about watch cases, the materials they're made out of, primarily stainless steel, and the finishes that we see on them. We hear about polished, matte, brushed, blasted. I'm going to tell you what they mean. I'm going to show you some examples so that when you see it, look online, whether it be our store or any store, and you see it in a description that it's a it's a satin and polished case, you'll know what that means. So watch cases are almost always advertised as being made of 316L stainless steel, with the exception of, say, cheap costume jewelry, which is maybe nickel plated brass or some other nickel plated steel. 316L is the industry standard for wearable stainless steel. Now, what is stainless steel? Well, stainless steel, which is a horrible name, by the way, is a corrosion resistant steel, which is also a horrible word because it's not resistant, forever, and it's not stainless forever. As anyone that's put, cutlery in the dishwasher and, maybe in a year or so it starts to rust, stainless steel does and can rust. There are better ones that don't, and 316L is one of the best ones that's not supposed to, but invariably it will eventually. 316 is a member of the 300 series of stainless steels, and it is a non-magnetic, which is great for watches, corrosion-resistant steel. So it becomes corrosion-resistant through the addition of an element called chromium. Chromium, you can't see it. Obviously, I've got a polished watch case in my hand. This is 316L. Chromium, around 15% or so, is part of the steel makeup, and after the case is made, it's passivated, which is a treatment where it's cleaned, and the chromium reacts with the atmosphere, creates a thin layer of chromium oxide, and that is an extremely passive layer. It doesn't react with anything, and that prevents corrosion from attacking the watch case. 316 also contains a decent amount of nickel. Nickel makes it anti-magnetic. You'll notice that stainless steel cookware does not attract a magnet either. At least most of it doesn't. Some of it's got, slugs embedded in it for better heat distribution. But still, the addition of nickel, around 10%, makes it anti-magnetic. Now, anti-magnetic, if you remember in the ISO video that I did, the water-resistant video, ISO 6425 requires that a dive watch be anti-magnetic up to 4,800 amps per meter. Which is a decent amount of magnetic field. It's not like the Rolex Milgauss, or it's not 1,000 Gauss or anything, but it's a decent number. Stainless steel is 316 stainless steel is chosen because it's corrosion resistant, it's anti-magnetic, and we know how to work with it. It's all over every industry. It's in large supply. So that's why 316L is pretty much the standard. If a watch doesn't advertise 316L as the case, and it's a known brand, you can pretty much assure yourself that it is. So commonplace that I would say some manufacturers don't even say it anymore. It's not really a selling point. It's almost a given at that point. But anyway, I got a bunch of watches in my hand, I got a bunch on the table. We'll go through them all, and I'll show you how we can plate them, how we can finish them to give them different looks, and explain to you how everything works. I hope you enjoy. Let's go over to the table and take a look. In front of you here I have 3 watches. All of them are 316L stainless steel cases, but they all have different finishes. What I'd like to do is just pick up each one, rotate it around, show you the finishes, and then we'll get into what makes them different. And then after all this, I'm going to bring up some PVD watches and show you what PVD plating does to a watch case. So the first one I'm going to pick up is this Junkers Bauhaus watch, Power Reserve with a Miyota 9100 series movement in it. Very nice watch, fancy dress watch, hand winds, Power Reserve needle. Anyway, you will see that the case on this is a high polish. So if I bring it up close to the camera, obviously you see my face reflecting in it, you see the camera. It's almost like a mirror. So how do they get it like this? Well, after the case is manufactured, machined, lathed, what have you, it's buffed continually on a wheel until this high sheen appears. So much in the same way you'd polish a piece of jewelry, you polish a watch case. So some of the advantages of this, obviously, it brings up a nice shiny surface, but it will attract scratching. Obviously, if you nick this, you're going to see it. But the good news is that, as long as they're small hairline scratches, you can buff them out, with your hand. Excuse me, not with your hand, but just with simple hand materials, some jeweler's rouge, a Cape Cod cloth, any mild, metal polishing compound, stainless steel compound, and you can polish out scratches and really get the watch looking like new. So this is considered a polished finish. So the whole case is polished. The case back is not. You can see it's dull, but the watch case itself is fully polished. So if a watch case is not polished or shiny, then what is it? Well, we can call it matte, and matte is just another way of saying something that's not shiny. But matte doesn't describe the actual finishing process. So in the realm of matte, there's really two things. There's brushed, also called satin, and then there's blasted. So this is a Monsterist Tauchmeister dive watch, another automatic Miyota-based watch, and its case is what they call brushed. So I'm going to try to bring the camera up and focus clearly on it, and you should be able to see lines going from left to right. That's not the grain of the metal. Those are finishing lines from when the case is brushed with a wheel. You'll see they go left to right here. So you're not really continuing, but it's its own pattern. And on the side of the case, back the other way. So this case is continually pressed up against a wheel, a wire wheel of some sort, or a buffing wheel, and this grain is kind of embedded into the case. So this creates this matte surface. It's not really shiny, a little bit, but you can see it diffuses the light. You're not going to see a reflection. You'll just see some kind of coloring, and you can make out that something is being reflected, but you're never going to figure out what the reflection actually is. If you scratch this, obviously it will show it is steel. So if you scratched it, with a material harder than steel, you'll see a scratch in it. But the kind of good news about this, and I don't have one here, but they make a brush, and it's like a touch-up brush. And what it is, it's a heavy bristle brush that you would take basically and just rub it against the surface wherever your scratch is. And what that will do is kind of create some new satining lines that will cover over your scratch. So you can kind of hide scratches that way. Other than that, you'd have to put it back up against a wheel, and once you do that, it's not going to look the same. So you have to do the whole case again. You'll refinish the entire case, which obviously is not very cost effective. So it's good to know there is a way that you can just just eliminate some light scratching if you have it. Now if you attack this with a jeweler's wheel and rouge, you would eventually come back easily to a shiny polished surface. Same material, it's just the surface finish. So you could bring this to this, and if you look online, guys do it with their watches often. They'll go from polished to bead blasted, they'll go from bead blasted to satin or whatever. They'll make different modifications because it's just metal. You can do these things. So this is one kind of matte finish. The second kind of matte finish, which is subtly different, but it is different, is called bead blasting. And here I have the Squale matte finished 50 Atmos. Now this is a bead blasted finish. And what I'm going to do again, same thing, I'm going to bring it up really close. And what bead blasting is now, bead blasting is a process where the case or the metal is hit with small shot, whether it be glass beads, sand, metal particles, although for watch cases probably not metal particles because then you, I guess, run the risk of rusting something. But you blast the case all over and it creates this extremely random, but on a macro scale, extremely homogeneous surface of just this dull material. Reflects no light. You're not going to see any reflection of color, or you have no idea what you're looking at. It does appear a little bit darker, and the actual roughness of the blast will depend on what kind of shot is used, the size of the shot. But this is what's considered, a bead blasted finish or a blasted finish. Now with this finish, if you were to mar the surface, scratch it, what have you, there's really nothing you can do. You'd have to reblast the case, and to reblast the case, you have to remove the movement, remove the crystal, because you really can't just mask a part of an area and then blast it. It doesn't work that way. So this is blasting. So again, we had polished, satin, and blasted. So these two, though, are going to be considered matte. This one's satin or brushed. This one's blasted and polished. I like to say it again and again because I think it is confusing, and I do think people get confused. And maybe, you know, between polished and matte, there's not much confusion because in life we use polish and matte to denote things. But the difference between satin and blasted, I'm going to put them right next to each other now, if we can get it to focus. You can definitely see it. I mean, it definitely brings a different color luster to the material, the blasted. And again, that's controlled by the shot that's used. But there is a definite graining difference. This is extremely dead. This is more of a tactical feel. And this maybe is still a little more dressy. And I'll bring it in a second. You'll notice that some vendors will combine satin and polished in the same watch case. You really can't combine blasted and polished. I'm not sure you'd want to. I guess you could. You'd have to blast the whole thing and then mask your blasted areas and then put it to a wheel and polish it. But satining and polished makes sense because you could satin one surface and polish the other because they're all going up against a wheel. You know, this one, the blasting is a process where you're shooting it with something, you know, in a confined environment. This is, you know, you picture a jeweler up against a jeweler's wheel, you know, polishing a watch. I did want to make one small mention just about polishing in general. Hand polishing generally is fine with a watch, but once you do go up to a jeweler's wheel and start really working on it, you know, you will read around on forums, and Rolex is extremely known for this. If you have a mid-80s or a vintage Rolex, it's worth more if it's never been polished or never been polished against a machine, because once you polish it, you do remove material and you kill the facets. You know, the edging of the edges where different surfaces come together. There's certain facets in the piece that people want to preserve, and when you polish it up against a wheel, you know, now a mechanical process with a machine, you kind of kill those facets. So just be careful what you polish. Just because it's scratched doesn't mean it needs to be polished. It might actually build character instead. Now I want to go over one more thing before I move on to PVD. So I was saying earlier that 316L is the steel of choice for, you know, almost all your watch manufacturers. Of course, Rolex being Rolex, they choose to use a 904 steel, which almost nobody uses. It's extremely hard to work with, but it's anti-corrosive, and, you know, according to Rolex, and I'll show you here, it has a really amazing sheen that can be brought out with polishing. So this is the link. These are two links from a 904 steel Rolex bracelet, and just look at the high polish on that center link. I mean, if it was flat, it would be a mirror. I mean, I don't know if you can really see it in the camera, but it is extremely polished. You know, as compared to this, you know, my eyes, I can see it here. I don't know if you guys can really see it, but it is a true mirror. It's quite amazing, you know, what they can do with the material. And then flipping it over, so this is the same material. See, and then the back is satin, because that's what goes up against your wrist. So you see it's satin or brushed. Flip it over, it's polished. So same material, we're just using different finishes. One side's polished, one side satin. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up just to show you something, because, you know, like I said, there's always outliers to every rule, and of course Rolex is going to be one of them. So lastly, I wanted to discuss PVD. PVD stands for physical vapor deposition. It is a process where metal is vaporized, and under vacuum and high temperature it is shot onto a stainless steel watch case, and it bonds on a molecular level. I'm not going to go into the process itself because I got to be honest with you, I really don't even understand it. I just kind of get what they do. PVD is more of a process than a material. You can PVD multiple metals. It doesn't have to be black. It could be a variance of colors. But not all PVD processes are the same. They can do thin PVD. They can do thick PVD. So when you hear PVD, and a lot of people say, oh, well, it's not DLC, which is diamond-like carbon coating. It's not DLC, so it's gonna fade, it's gonna chip. It's not necessarily true. Every company does their own PVD process and treatment. The thicker it is, obviously, the higher the wear can be. A company like Squally, as I'll show you, they PVD their watches with the same people that do Beretta pistols. So obviously, a pistol's got a lot of moving parts, slides, you know, things that move around, and you wouldn't want the PVD to scrape off. So the PVD finish on a watch like that is extremely thick and it will not come off in normal use. Now, the only thing that PVD does not bring to the table is it is not harder per se than the base material. So if you do knock the watch, boom, you drop it on a counter or something, or a concrete sidewalk, you will chip through the PVD because you'll gouge out the stainless steel underneath. Whereas DLC, and maybe this is another watch and learn, which is that diamond-like carbon coating is actually harder than the steel, so it's an even harder coating to chip. So it does prevent against scratching and bangs and bumps and bruises and all that good stuff. So anyway, so here I've got two Orients in front of you. I got the Ray 2 and the Ray Raven 2. Same exact watch. The only differences are this one is steel. Let me pull back some of the plastic. And this is PVD. So I want to bring up the steel one first so I can show you some of the detail. If you look, you'll see the top of the watch case, the top of the lugs. I'll bring in a pencil real quick just to point. This is satin. This whole material, this whole surface is satin on the lugs, and the side of the case is polished. You can certainly see that this is all high polish. Moving on to the bracelet, you've got satin, polished, satin, polished, satin. It's finished in all different ways. So what happens, when you PVD, surfaces like this? Well, PVD is really it's just a coating. So like painting a wall, if there's an imperfection in your wall, painting it will just show you the imperfection even more. So PVD is kind of the same thing. So if I look at the Ray Raven 2, which is the PVD version of that watch, you'll see the top of the lug is dull. It's matte. It's got this satin PVD coating to it. But the side of the case, ta-da, it's shiny. PVD glossy. It hasn't been polished. This is just the same watch. They've PVD plated it. So because the surface is smoother, it's a better surface finish. It's a lower RMS, if you will. You get a glossier coat. Same thing with the bracelet. If you look at the bracelet, it goes satin, glossy, satin, glossy, satin. So all that's really happened here is that we've just taken this deal, we've put this PVD plating on top of it, and now we get the same watch. But now the PVD alters in its shininess from dull to polished. So then I'm able to do the same thing then with the squale. So I showed you before the bead blasted squale. So the squale PVD, is the same exact watch, but now it's been blasted. It's been PVD. So now the blasted surface is a PVD surface, and it's got the blasting underneath. So now it's totally diffuse. It doesn't really reflect light. It's very dead, if you will. So all the PVD does is it takes on a characteristic of the material that it's coating. So pretty cool just to realize that. I like it how the Orient did it, because you can really see side by side on the Orients that it really takes what's underneath the watch and it brings it out. So this has been Mark from LongIslandWatch.com with Watch and Learn number 8, explaining a little bit to you about watch cases and finishes. If you like this video, please do like it now. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do so at this time. If you have any questions or comments, put them below, especially ideas for new watch and learns. I mean, I have plenty of ideas still in the hopper, but I do like to, hear what you have to say. I jot them down and I put them in the bank for later. So if you have any questions or comments, put them down below and I'll be sure to address them as soon as I can. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.